Mr. Carlton Mathes, who's been a master gardener. This year he turns 10 years as a master gardener. 10 years. And so we're very proud of him. He's been a very active master gardener through those 10 years. He's been a leader in many different projects. And today he's going to bless us with a beautiful seminar. And he's going to use me as sort of a guinea pig on some of my tools, but he's going to show us how to take care of your tools to get ready for spring. So Carlton, thank you.
You know, in following the guidelines of COVID, I'm going to take my mask off. It's only Tom and I here, and he's 6 feet away, but I want everybody to see how color coordinated my mask was with my hat and my master gardener garden. But so you can hear my southern drawl a little better. In full disclosure, I'm not an expert, but these things I've done to make my tools last a lot longer. And all the I'm gonna move Henrietta out of the way here. All the products you see here, I'm not being paid to promote any of these products, so feel free to use them or not use them or find generic equivalents. And all these things I've used at some form or another in my garage to keep my tools looking good. I'll start out with the stable product. This product you use to put in your gasoline for lawnmowers, weed eaters, blowers. This will stabilize the gas so that the ethanol in the gas won't gum up your small engines. And I've used this for the last 3 or 4 years, and I use it year round. But every spring, I used to start my tools up. It'd be hard to start. They'd be sluggish. But since I've been using this stable product in the gas, they've done a lot better. They're a lot more. They run a lot better. And you put and this stuff lasts a long time. You put 1 ounce in a gallon, so it doesn't take much of this to make it 1 ounce in 2.5 gallons. So, and I think in my house I use about 3 gallons of gas, you know, for the whole season for the, you know, for the lawnmower and the weed eater and the blower. The next thing I have here is called Brake Clean. It's a parts cleaner. So if you have something like this shear here, if you haven't used it in a while and it gets stuck or rusted, you can spray some of this Brake Clean, or you can spray some penetrate oil. This is made by Liquid Wrench, and this is Brake Clean brand. But you spray that on the rusty parts, and the penetrating oil of this Brake Clean will soak into the parts, and you can break it loose. And you can reuse these, and you don't have to throw out rusty tools. Another lubricating product I use is WD-40, you know, with silicone. Interesting fact, most of you gardeners probably know that WD-40, it's a chemical, and the WD stands for water displacement 40. So they tried 39 times to get this right. And on the 40th time, they make WD-40 that we know and use for all kinds of products. And this is also used for rusty things. And the lithium will put a coating on your tools to keep the rust, away from it and make your tools last a long time. This jar here, I don't know if you can see, but this is my jar of boiled linseed oil. Now this linseed oil, it's Clean Strip brand, but I put boiled linseed oil on all the wood handles, like for shovels and rakes and hand tools. But that linseed oil will coat the wood, and so you won't have, the wood will last longer, it won't crack on you. And after you sand the handles, you won't get a bunch of splinters. So that's what that is. Another thing I use, I'm going off camera, don't go away. Paint. And we'll show some things. This paint is, let me get this other jar here. This is a Rust-Oleum brand, but it's paint and primer. So if you have a rusty shovel or rake, you use this. You won't have to put primer on the metal when you cleaned it and sanded it, but this is rust and primer. I don't like to use this generally. I like to do a primer first and then a top coat. But for the garden tools, you have to do this every season. So this paint and primer makes it a lot quicker. So So we talked about boiled linseed also. What do you use? What do you apply these chemicals with? Well, to clean like a rusty shovel. And Tom has this is a good old shovel. You can see it's rust. Not only is it rusty, but it has, looks like concrete remnants on it. And this one has a, fiberglass handle on it. So for this one, with a rusty shovel, you can take either some steel wool, and this steel wool comes in several different sizes, from coarse, medium, fine, or I think most of the steel wool I use, it starts out either 4 zeros or 3 zeros, triple knot, quadruple knot, and it goes all the way up to 1, 2, or 3, which is really coarse. Or you could use sandpaper and just sand. Use steel wool or sandpaper and sand this till it gets nice and shiny and smooth and flat. And take a bristle brush and clean off as much of the concrete as you can. Or in our case, a lot of times after sitting, in a garage or in the backyard, after having that clay mud on, that clay mud is hard as concrete. So you sand it with some sandpaper, just put a couple of folds, sand it nice and good, and get this surface rust off of here. And then after you get the surface rust off, see, Tom's shovel has some, let me get real close to the camera. You can see where, you can see the shovel's edge has been hitting rocks or roots, and it's got a little lip on it where it's bent back. You can take your, if you don't have access to a grinder to make that edge again, you can take a flat file, put it on the rough side. The file has a rough side and a fine side, just like sandpaper. And you put a nice little edge on here. Now you don't have to put a knife edge like, for kitchen knives, but just an edge so that it makes it nice and sharp enough where it can cut through the soil a lot better. Here. After you get your file going and you get a little paint out, then your shovel can look like this. Ooh, you see, this is my shovel from last year. I repainted it in the last fall to make it look good. But this, you can't, I don't know if it picks up on the camera, but you can see a nice straight edge on this shovel, and this will make digging in your gardens a lot easier because it won't be so dull or blunt. So again, we have a before and after. Here's Tom's shovel. I don't know if I got it angle right, but you see the difference? And this is just one coat of paint. And one thing I want to, so this shovel probably came, it's probably black or red. And there's no reason why you can't have your favorite color on your own shovel so you can own your tools. Now, one time we were doing the Master Gardener project, and I brought out this golden shovel, and it really impressed the interns that I had a golden shovel. But your shovels can be whatever color you want. If you want it fuchsia or eggplant or whatever color you want, it'll make your shovel look good. And also when we do projects together, you'll be able to identify your tools that much quicker. So let's turn to the handle of the shovel. This is either oak or hickory handle. So what I do for the shovel, I take some sandpaper and sand this down really well. Just wrap it around there, just back and forth on this wooden handle till you get it nice and smooth. Nothing is more frustrating than to grab a shovel or rake and get that splinter right in the right there by your thumb in that real tender part. Oh, that's really painful. So sand it till it's nice and smooth. This sandpaper, I probably start out with 80 grit sandpaper to get it mostly smooth, and then you finish up with a finer grit, like a 120 grit, get it nice and smooth. And then you take a rag, soak the rag with some linseed oil, and soak it really well. be very generous on it and get it nice and soaked and let it dry, and then do it again to get a couple of coats in there. Now, sometimes the this linseed oil can be a little tough on your skin. So if you have sensitive skin, you make sure you have some. These are disposable gloves. So if your skin is sensitive to olive oil or any chemicals, then by all means use protective gloves. And another thing about linseed oil, when linseed oil dries, it can give off heat. So it's been known to spontaneously combust. So don't throw the old rags away inside. You put them outside somewhere, rinse them off and let them dry. And after they've been rinsed and dried, then you can throw them away. Another thing we use, like for Tom's concreted shovel, we mentioned steel wool and sandpaper, but you can also get wire brushes. So the wire brushes would be a very aggressive thing to scrape off the concrete with. Now these brushes, this is my big brush. I use to get the big stuff. And to get in nooks and crannies, you'll need to use either the brass brush or the steel brush here. This is a pack that came from Harbor Freight. This was like $3. This will last the season. But these will be worn out by the end of the season if you clean all your tools. So most gardeners should have at least 2 rakes, a couple of shovels. So when you get done with them, these will probably be toast, but that may last a few years. This lasts quite a few years. It's really stiff, so it'll knock all the concrete off and all the red clay. So you've been in good shape to go ahead and paint them. So here's another. This shows the linseed oil, how it looks on the shovel, on the wood handle. It'll make it a little darker, but it will be nice and smooth. Then on my post hole digger, I use this for before and after. This handle, this bottom one has been treated with linseed oil. I usually do it every spring. This top handle has not been. See how light it is? You probably can't tell in the camera, but if you look closer, this wood is starting to split and to get some checks in it. And I'll probably get a bad splinter from it if I use this. So before I use this, I'll sand it and put linseed oil on this one. But for this project, for this discussion, I left it, this hasn't been treated in a couple of years to see how gray it is from the weather. And this one's protected. You want your tools to last a long time because you don't want to buy them every spring because they should last a long time. Now this is Tom's handle. I don't know if you can see how this one's really worn. Let me get real close to the camera. You can see the pitting and chips on this handle. But this handle can be saved. A little sanding, some linseed oil, and this thing will be good as new. Well, maybe not this one, Tom. Sorry.
That's my composting shovel.
Your composting shovel, this little guy? Mm-hmm. Tom, he needs some love too. Okay, next we need to go on to sanitizing. Some of your, we always mention about a 10% solution, and this is 32 ounces, so 3.5, 4 ounces of bleach. Fill this up with water, so you have your 10% solution. So when you have your pruners, you need to clean and sanitize the pruners so you don't carry fungus and bacteria from one plant to the next. These are mine. I lost a handle somewhere, but they still useful. Well, what you do is remember the steel wool? So you take the steel wool and you clean all surfaces. Use the fine steel wool on these tools. The rough wouldn't be work, but use fine steel wool. You clean here to get all the tar and residue off. You may even have to use some soap and water to get last year's tar and residue off of it. But after you've hit it with steel wool and clean it with soap and water, you have these joints here where the tool moves. So those, and then where the blades touch, wherever it touches, it could scrape off and rust. So that's when you want to use your silicone grease, your silicone lube. You know, you lube up all the joints where the tool is attached, and it should make them last forever, make them easier to use, safer to use, and more efficient to use. Everybody should have a pair of these guys. These are the big boys. Now this is a Fisker brand, and it also has a pivot joint which you need to oil. You need to put some lubrication right here in these joints, and then lightly, soap and water, sanitize it with the bleach solution, and then spray it with the WD-40 or this other penetrating oil, just to give it a coating and keep that bare metal from rusting. And that'll make these tools be a lot more efficient, easier to clean. They won't be stiff. They just move just like this. And hopefully they won't look like Tom's. You can probably hear Tom's moving, just like an old man. But yeah, this one I would, of course, clean it with soap and water, put the 10% solution on it to sanitize it, and then where all the joints are, these screws, you hit that with just a dab of penetrating oil. Not a whole. It doesn't need a whole lot because the penetrating oil will coat the metal. So just a little dab. This one comes with a little spray wand. So you just barely touch it, and then you could take a shop towel or a rag and just wipe it over the entire tool and get a nice even coating on it. And these tools will last you this should last you forever. Tom, are there any questions in the chat that we need to address? Or
Let's see.
We do have some questions that have popped up in the chat.
Go ahead, Matt. Go ahead and ask a couple.
Okie doke. One asks, I'm going to pronounce this so wrong, but is Rust-Oleum paint latex or acrylic?
they're all based. It's a acrylic. It's not acrylic. It's an all-based paint, like lacquer, like a lacquer
It's
paint.
not latex.
It's not latex.
Yeah, it's oil.
Okay.
It's all based in that if you get it on, you have to clean off with mineral spirits. So that makes it all based, or I don't know about acrylic, but it's not latex for sure.
Okay.
The latex paint, that's not, you don't want to put latex paint on metal because the latex will hold moisture in and it'll just flake off once the metal starts rusting. You know, it'll form a rust layer between the paint and the tool. So use all base paint on your metal products.
Okay.
You know, latex is for wood because it soaks into the wood, but the all base for metal.
Cool. And let me see here. This person had difficulties logging in, so they say they may have missed it, but what do you do to get rust off? What do you do to get rust off?
Well, you can use sandpaper. So this is yeah, it's more like a show and tell, but this is 80 grit sand. The grits on sandpaper, the lower number is very rough and the higher numbers are very fine. This is a 120, it's very fine. This 80 grit, this is really rough. So this will take off that first layer. You can also use a wire brush that we have here, either a big wire brush like this or a smaller wire brush. But the sandpaper, if you're starting out, the first time you should start with 80 grit sandpaper or a heavy duty wire brush and just get it till it's smooth. And you'll see the metal may even get a little bit shiny, but you want to make it nice and smooth. The rust is really rough. So you get it so it's nice and smooth. Then you can hit it with this primer, this paint and primer, or you can just hit it with some WD-40 with the lithium to put a coating of oil around it, make it last.
Okay. And we have some more questions that piled up. I'm not sure how many of these you're going to cover because you have more to present, or were you just taking a quick? break for
I was just taking a break. I got a few more things to go over for lawnmowers, and that should be
Okay, well, I have a question here about pruners. Do you mind if we go through these questions on pruners?
sure.
Okay, how do you sharpen your pruners?
Ooh, that's you find somebody at Ace Hardware that does it.
Hmm.
But if you look at Tom's pruners, the pruners and your kitchen knives, they have a flat edge and then they have an angled edge. You want to take your file and just put a nice edge on the cutting edge of your pruners. So this has a small angle on this cutting edge to make it sharp. The back side is flat as well as this part here. It should be flat. So the two flat parts slide on top of each other, and then this sharp part is what does the cutting. Now if you look at your pruners, you can see the angle on the front. So for your novice people, you would just try to use the file to recreate that same edge that the factory had on it. You don't need, it's not a steep angle. It's like, to be technical, it's like 25 to 30 degree angle on this edge. And that angle, it's a combination of sharpness and durability. If you put a steeper angle on it, it'll be sharper, but it won't be as durable. So you back off to around 25 degree angle. And that works on kitchen knives, wood chisels, pruners and loppers. But you take a flat file and just, if you got a Russian one like Tom's here, you can just go along here until you get a nice, even looking edge. And it won't take about 5 to 10 minutes, and you can see a shiny part on it. So you want a shiny edge here, about a 25 degree angle, and that should make your loppers really, really efficient cutting. And the same is true for these little guys. The same thing applies. You got the back side should be flat, as well as this should be flat, and then the little angle comes right here on the front. And it should be 25 to 30 degrees. And these you can see the factory edge. You can, if your tools are fairly new, you'll see the factory edge that's bright metal versus the blackened part that they file off to make the edge. So just recreate that and you should be fine.
Awesome, thank you. And another person asks that they stated that they use a pumice to get the rust off their barbecue grill, a pumice block. Will that work out rust?
It should. Pumice is very coarse. So that's the same as using 80 grit sandpaper or these coarse steel wool. But the problem with the pumice is it does better on flat surfaces. On round surfaces, that's why we use steel wool, because the steel wool can form in those round surfaces, and it'll be a lot more efficient than a pumice stone would. But the pumice stone would work. Because see, you take a steel wool, this is really, and this will, you can just, Tom, can you move that? I've got a screen there.
Oh, that's okay.
That's the survey. You got to check.
No.
Yeah, you can take your steel wool and just wrap it around here, just back and forth, till it gets nice and bright. And it may not get bright, but it will get smooth. So fill up it before you start, and just hit it with steel wool until it's smooth. And you'll see a difference between the part before you steel wool and after you steel wool. And that's why the pumice stone wouldn't work on something like this, because these shears has several different angles. So having the steel wool makes it easier to get all those angles in a couple swipes. And with steel wool, you go from rust down to fine. Anytime you're sanding things, you start with the rough grade, then you progress to medium, and then to a fine grade, and you get a nice finish for painting, or just to oil it, or to put linseed oil on.
Nice. Is there a group that will come to your house to sharpen your lawnmower blade for a push mower?
Is there?
A group that will come to your house to sharpen your lawnmower blade. Do you know of anyone who offers this?
it's a good service. I don't know if anybody who offers it. But I do know the local Aces has, a small engine shop. They would take care of that for you. I have no idea about the cost.
I live on a farm in Taft, and I have Tri-Green come pick up my tractor and mowers, and they pick it up and do the delivery free. And they do the service once a year and sharpen blades and everything before spring.
That's good.
Thanks. Yeah. What was oil on joints and etc. of the pruners? What was the oil that you used?
I use, this is called WD-40 Protective with white lithium grease. The lithium grease does better for lubrication and it stays on longer. But that being said, if you have a lithium grease that stays on longer, when you use them in soil and dirt, it will collect dirt in that joint as well. So you have to stay on top of it to keep it clean and keep it lubricated. But I like the white, I use the lithium grease because it has better lubricating properties along with the penetrating oil that WD-40 already had. And lithium is one of the best lubricants you can use out there. Now, in addition to tools, you can spray this in your lock set, in your bed bolts and on your locks at home, make them work a lot smoother. So there's multiple uses for a lubricating oil like this. Hinges of your doors, your car doors, your house doors. You put a couple drops on this and they'll stop all those squeaks and stops that metal from metal grinding and gives it a little lubrication.
Nice. And someone asked if you prefer wood or fiberglass handles on your tools.
I have both. Step away from the camera. I know that's a no-no. I have both. This is a fiberglass handle rake that I treated this one to a fresh coat of paint last fall.
Wow.
You just, for fiberglass, you would put a piece of tape here to keep the spray from getting onto the fiberglass. But I always advocate buying high quality tools, and usually the fiberglass handle tools are a little higher quality. So definitely, if you have it in your budget, go for fiberglass handles, go for it. But I think the fiberglass handles, I think they have less vibration, like for a shovel, if you hit a rock, maybe the fiberglass handle will be a lot softer in your hands, but definitely the fiberglass handles are good. And they get, they just a slight rub of light sandpaper just to get all the dirt and stains off of it is all you need for fiberglass. It should last you a long time. And you don't have to buy tools every year. These tools should last you quite a long time, maybe even a lifetime if you take care of them.
And someone was just wanting a quick clarification. What oil is it that you use on your tools that have wooden handles? Is it a penetrating oil?
It's a boiled linseed oil. You can, this boiled linseed oil is a go-to oil for wood products, but you can also use tung oil or mineral oil. Now, mineral oil is a food grade oil, so if you want it food grade, and I think I bought some mineral oil. It was like $3 for a quart. This stuff right here is like $6 or $7, but I've had this for a couple of years, so it's how grungy it gets after a while. But it's just boiled linseed oil, and this is by Clean Strip, but there's several different brands out there. But I do remind you, the people who have sensitive skin, the boiled linseed oil could cause you problems. So use protective gloves when you use boiled linseed oil, but don't use leather gloves because this will soak into your leather gloves and make them very slippery. So be careful with that. Thank you. And we're going to take one more question, then we're going to let Mr. Carlton move on, so that way we don't get too caught up in the Q&A, because we can always do that after the second half of this presentation. But someone asks, on a garden rake, any suggestions for when the head pops out constantly from the metal collar? You just have to fix it. Once again, we'll use Tom's tools. Tom put let me get that real close to the camera. You can see he put a bolt through his. So, you know, there's that. You can just, you know, you take your rake and you jam it shut. Then he put a bolt through it right here. The only other thing you could do, like for this, if the tang of the rake, which the tang is the part that sticks inside the wood, you know, if you can separate it, a lot of times what has happened is the wood has gotten wider. So if you could take another sliver of wood, force it into this protective collar, then put your rake on it and tap it down. So you've got too much clearance on the tang of the rake. So by putting an extra sliver of wood in there, you take up some of that clearance and makes it tighter, and it will grip. Another thing is if you know, by putting tung oil on this, it keeps the rake from drying out as much, so the wood stays moisture and it will grip that a little better. But you know, take the rake off, you know, whittle out another, like what's the phrase? What's this? A shim. You need a wood shim in there to take up the space, and then tap this back down, and that wood shim will take up the space where you've lost, and should make that rake hold a lot better. And you may have to try it a couple times, couple different thicknesses of the shim to get it just right. So if you can still take it off, put another wedge or another shim just a little bit wider, and try it again. It should work. Or you could put a bolt in here. That should work as well.
Awesome. And I think with that, we're ready to learn about lawnmowers.
Okay. You know, they say you're supposed to. So this is the spark plug for my lawnmower, and this is the old one. I don't know if it shows up on the camera, but see how dark the used spark plug is? When I first bought my mower, I could start it with one pull. I got to find the camera. So this plug's been there a couple of years, so I'm going to replace it this year. When I took it out, I noticed how gummed up and black this electrode was. This needs to be cleaned so that your lawnmower burns gas a lot easier. So I put the new one in, and I recommend everybody put a new one in. Or you could take this off. You could take it off and clean it to where it's nice and bright again. Hit it with some of this WD-40 and a steel wool or the wire brush and clean it up. Or you could spend $3 and get your brand new one from Honda or, you know, whatever brand mower you have. And also, while you're at it, make sure you get some lawnmower oil to replace the oil in your mower. You know, this is 10W30, which is, you know, this is not the oil that's put in most cars now, but this is a good thick oil for that's recommended for your lawnmower. You know, look at, if you have the warranty, the owner's manual, see what they recommend for your mower. Most mowers need 1/4 of these, you know, for an oil change. You drain the oil, put a new quart of oil in there, and you're good to go for a season. So after you've changed the spark plug, changed the oil, you put some stable in the gas, you should be good to go. And like we mentioned earlier in the question and answer period, you know, sharpen that blade. Most people use a grinder to sharpen the blade, but you can also use the metal file. It'll take a little while longer, but you put a nice edge on that blower, on that mower blade, you know, cut grass really fine. You know, if you know, this year when you first start cutting grass, if you look at your grass when you cut it, if it has a nice shear on top of the grass, then your blade's good. But if you look at your grass and it looks like it was just ripped apart, then you know your blower blade needs to be sharpened again. And also, a sharp blade will make the mower more efficient. It won't bother